Should I just go ahead, Bhatia?
Yep.
Okay.
Let me, we are live. We have people in our meeting right now. Thank you so much, everybody, for being so patient today. We were experiencing some technical difficulties, but now it looks like we've gotten those straightened out. Welcome, everybody, to another session of Gentle Chair Yoga with Keith Beasley. Um, as always, we'd like to thank our friends of the Brookline Library for supporting this program and programs like it. We also would like to recognize our community partners, Brookline Interactive Group, for streaming this program and other programs to their Facebook page, their YouTube page, as well as local channel 3 on Xfinity and RCN. As always, participation in this online yoga program could result in injury. Not all exercises presented here are suitable for everyone. These exercises are not intended to substitute for proper medical care or advice. Always consult your physician before beginning any exercise program. The creators, teachers, and producers assume no responsibility for injuries from this participation in this program. And with that, I give you Keith.
Hi, let's begin with just a little meditation. We started just a mite late, and that tends to unsettle most of us, the uncertainty. So I'd like to start with seated or standing in mountain pose. You can do either one. Seated might be nicer because you'll be able to shut the eyes, but just follow along. This is I sometimes read from this book called The Pebble for Your Pocket. And just follow along, listen and breathe in. Just follow the instructions. It's very straightforward. It's breathing in. I know I am breathing in. Breathing out. I know I am breathing out. As my in-breath grows deep, my out-breath grows slow. Breathing in, I calm my body. Breathing out, I feel at ease. Breathing in, I smile. Breathing out, I release. Dwelling in the present moment, I know this is a wonderful moment. So continuing to breathe a few more times. You can always rest your hand on the belly to feel the belly moving, to feel the breath coming in and out. Keeping the attention on that feeling of the breath, the movement of the breath. Noticing how the breath fills the belly and then moves up into the lower ribs a little bit and maybe even up a little. The big movement, though, is down in the belly. The other ones are a lot smaller. The most important movement is the belly. So we call that diaphragmatic breathing. Ideally, we breathe diaphragmatically most of the time during our day. And it gives us a better feeling of being filled with the breath, fills us up better, so to speak, and also relaxes us more. When we exhale with the diaphragmatic breath, we get the relaxation response, which is the same as the name of the book, The Relaxation Response. It's a good book if you haven't seen it or read it. It's in the library. Now let's make the sound of Om together. So I'm just going to tap the bell one time, not too loud. And then we'll make the sound of Om 3 times. Remember, the Om sound is the ah. So big wide mouth, ah, and then oh. Notice the shape of the mouth with the like making that buzzing sound like we ate something really good. So let's begin. We'll breathe in. One more time. Notice the quietness when we end the Om sound. Even if there's other noises, we get that feeling, that experience of quietness. Sometimes I say silence, but of course it's not really silence, but things get quiet. We still have all the sounds around us. So let's bring the hands together and let's start our warming up with some breathing in with movement of the arms and the shoulders. Perhaps you're even noticing that the hips are rocking back and forth a little bit. Always wanting to start with a warm up. You can even give a little sigh as you breathe out. It can be nice to just go, oh. The sigh of relief. It's another way that we bring on relaxation in the body by sighing. It's very natural. And we get better at it with practice. As we practice sighing, we learn to release a little bit more. And let's bring the palms together in front of the heart and just open the hands a little and go ahead and spread the fingers out so they're fairly even, like this with my hand. And see if you can get the hands to press evenly into each other so that you feel like the two hands become one, or you can't tell where one ends and the other begins. And then pause there for a couple of breaths, sitting up tall, feeling the feet supporting you underneath. And if you're seated, feeling the buttocks and the sitting bones in the chair, especially the sitting bones. That is our support. So those things enable us to extend the spine up. And of course, yoga, this is our hatha yoga practice, is really about the breath and the lengthening and the mobility and flexibility of the spine. We say you're as young as your spine is flexible. And the next time you exhale, go ahead and drop the hands and then lift up. Palms are facing up as you inhale. So the hands are moving around on the breath. The breath is staying rhythmical. And as I breathe in, I'm lifting the hands up in sync with the breath. So think of the hands following the breath. So if I was to stop the hands right in the middle where we pause for just a moment, the breath keeps right on going. Doesn't change. The rhythm of the breath doesn't change. And a couple more times with the hands. Add the hands. And then bringing the palms together, a few cactus breaths. So we're looking like one of those big saguaro cactuses. Making sure the shoulders feel okay. If the shoulders feel like they're bunching up when the elbows are lifted up to the shoulder level, then drop the elbows down a little. We want the shoulders to feel relaxed. And don't bring the elbows higher than the shoulders. You could even work down here if you wanted. That's okay too. And let's begin to give ourselves a little hug, starting with just the elbows. And then we'll work our way up the arms. And we keep going until we find a spot where that's as far as we're going to go. So we don't want to be straining And we want to be able to breathe freely, and we want the shoulders to stay relaxed. So if you feel like things are not relaxed, then maybe you're going a little you're wrapping yourself up a mite too much. And see if you can find a little gracefulness, this opening of the arms, and then a sweeping of the arms to sort of cover yourself, draping your arms on your body. And change the cross so that one arm is on top one time, and then the next time the opposite arm is on top. Notice how it might feel slightly different. You might feel a little more open with one rather than the other. And you might notice I have my eyes closed here, so I can really focus on the feeling of the breath and the movement together. So it's inhaling and exhaling. Noticing how the chest is broadening as I inhale, and then as I exhale, I'll turn around so you can see the shoulder blades are really coming out to the sides. So there's a separation, there's space between the inside edges of the shoulder blades. If you're having trouble feeling that, try slowing the breath down a little bit. Sometimes it's easier. If we have more time, we're able to bring our attention and feel what's happening. When things are moving quickly, it's hard to do that. It's maybe impossible to do that. We just sort of rely on what we've done in the past. But when we go slow, we can feel. And we can even give yourself a hug and pause there for a moment and keep breathing. Take a breath in like this. And notice how the chest, the breath is very limited in the front, but the shoulder blades, you may feel them move a little apart from the breathing in. And then as we exhale, those shoulder blades soften. And then the next time we release. So we're just pausing there for what? So we exhale, wrap ourselves, and then we take one breath. And then we exhale, relaxing the shoulders and the shoulder blades, and then we inhale and the arms open again. So we won't do it here, but if you wanted to practice on your own, you could practice multiple breaths wrapped up like this, and you'll notice how the emphasis from the breath changes from the front to the back of the body. And let's lower the hands down, and let's slide back in the chair. And we're going to go do a little bit of warm up for the legs and the abdomen here. Go ahead and bring the hands down to the seat of the chair and press the hands down, or in my case, the chair is kind of narrow. So I'm going to take my fingers like this, and I'm going to take them and I'm going to gently press my fingertips down just a little bit. And notice how when you do that, it's a little bit easier to lift the chest up. It's almost like we got another pair of legs supporting the spine, lifting the spine up. So you can try that a few times, pressing and lifting the heart up. Let me turn sideways so you can see. So I'm getting this lifting of the heart up. So this is not lifted, so the back is kind of flat. And then I lift up, pelvis tilts a little, I get a more curve in the lumbar. I'm not over curving though. So remember, we want the lumbar spine to be in a good spot. So we don't want to be, when we sit, we don't want to be curved back like this, where it's collapsed, and the front of the vertebrae are all squashed together in this position. And we don't want to have a sway back where we're have so much curve that now the back of the vertebra are all squashed together. We want to be in between, and that's our natural position for the vertebra. Remember, we have the three curves in the spine, the in and the out between the shoulder blades, and the in slightly with the lumbar. And that gives the spine much of its strength. It's designed, we're designed for those three curves. And so we were sitting up, and you going to use our hands to just provide a little extra lift for the chest as we lift the leg up. So see if by pressing the hands down ever so slightly, you can get a little more feeling of lift in the spine. So it's easier to elongate from the sitting bones up to the crown of the head. You don't have to use the hands. It may be that with enough effort, enough abdominal work to help lift or support the back, you don't need the hands. But it's a nice way to practice. So this is, in yoga, we have a pose called staff pose, which is called Dandasana, which is where we're pressing the hands down. We usually do this on the floor. We press the hands down and the legs stick straight out, and we use that pose as a way to extend the spine. And at the same time, stretch the backs of the legs, which is what we're doing here, one leg at a time. If this is really no problem, really easy, you could do 2 legs at a time if you wanted, like we would do in Dandasana. Making sure that, think about the toes coming back. So as I'm lengthening out, the heel is, the back of the leg is extending from underneath the buttocks, the back, down the back of the leg, down the calf, out through the heel. We just want to be, we always want to be mindful though that when we're stretching that everything feels okay. So especially the joints, the back of the knee, the Achilles tendon down here. So we don't want to feel like those things are straining. Perhaps we're feeling a little bit of lengthening there, but no straining at any of the joints. When we're stretching, we want to feel most of the stretch coming in they call it the belly of the muscle, sort of the center. So there's a bunch of muscles that run along here. So the belly's kind of in the middle. It's the big part, the belly part, the middle part. And the same thing up top with the thighs, and the same thing with the calf. The belly is right in the middle. So think about feeling the belly of the muscle, and we don't want to feel the joints where the muscle connects with the various joints in the body. And that's the same with the arms, with really any of the muscles. We want to be very mindful that our joints, we keep them in good condition. They last longer. And let's sit up nice and tall and slide forward. And we're going to start to circle around. As we're circling, we're lengthening. So even before you start to make big circles around, think about lengthening up first, and then even starting with a small circle, like a spiral, like when we start right in the middle, and then we start to make a little circle around. Like in The Wizard of Oz, when Dorothy takes the yellow brick road, she starts right in the center of this spiral. And of course, the road starts to spiral out and gets bigger. And then so you can start to spiral, keeping the spine lengthened. And then you can work with the hands and the legs. You might want to, if you're going to be making bigger circles around, perhaps the feet are further apart and further out like this. So I'm getting wider, so I have more support as I go forward. If I'm going to take the hands away, I'm going to need to lift more and really get this abdomen supporting the back here. So if in doubt, think about extending up rather than circling out. And once you start to make bigger circles, if you find that you can't keep the extension, then that's as far as you go, or go back a little bit. And then let's go the other way, please. Of course, the hands on the knees is a great way to support ourselves. So I can come forward and even make the arms a part of the movement so that they're bending in time with the bending forward. So my elbows are bending at the same time I'm bending at the waist forward. So it feels like they're working together. And then sit up nice and tall, and then rolling the shoulders. Let's do our swimming. So you can add the arms like this if you want, or you could just work with the shoulders like this. So depending on how your shoulder joints are feeling. And let's go the other way, reaching out and then across and down the outside. We're starting to feel the body turning here. So we want to let the body turn at this waist area, the waistband between the hips and the lower ribs. You want to feel the movement back and forth here, or perhaps feeling the diagonal movement this across the body. And if you look down at your body, you'll actually see how the turning is a diagonal movement from the hip up to the opposite shoulder. So sometimes just taking a couple minutes or taking a moment to look and see what your body's actually doing gives us good information and can tell us whether or not, say, our alignment is good, or it can be difficult to, we don't always feel what's happening to our body because we're not aware enough. And sometimes looking at it can tell us whether or not I'm sitting up nice and tall. So if I look down, if I'm sitting up tall and I look down, I just lower my chin, there's a straightness here. If I look down and my belly is going in like this, and I know my back is sticking out, and I don't want that. So I want to make sure I need to pull my belly forward like this. And of course, you could always, if you wanted, you could practice a little bit in front of the mirror. I'm not a big fan of doing that a lot, but I think every once in a while, watching ourselves gives us good information. If you start to do it a lot, you get kind of focused on the mirror and how you look. That's probably not the best thing. And sitting up nice and tall. And the one other thing that can be handy, and if you're willing to stand and you have a wall, standing at the wall can be a nice way to actually tell where we're vertical. So for this one, the baseboard only sticks out a little bit, so it's probably okay. If you have a wall, if you have something, if it's very uneven behind you, then it won't work. You could use a door jamb if that was the case. So I have this door right here. If I stood in the door jamb, I don't know if you can see me, you can kind of see half of me, then that's another possibility, because door jambs are nice and straight. And that's assuming there isn't a threshold at the bottom of the door. But standing up nice and tall, so this is our standing mountain pose. And it can be nice because we feel the wall behind us. Try not to lean. So I feel the wall against my heel and my buttock, my shoulder blades, and even the back of my head, but I'm not leaning. So I put the heels back first, and then I go back enough so I'm just touching the wall. And I can practice like this, thinking about extending the spine up. So let's try that for a moment. So you can do it in your chair too by sliding to the back of the chair, using the back of the chair as if it was the wall. So for this one, let me move the chair out of the way for a moment. So if you're doing it at the wall, you can adjust your feet so that they're comfortable underneath your hips, and then feeling the buttocks gently touching the wall, the shoulder blades, perhaps moving the shoulders back a little to open the chest. So notice how my chest is broadening, and then firming up the belly. Sometimes the belly is going to want to stick out like this when you move the shoulders back. So we need to engage the belly. Think about moving the navel back. If you need to, find your belly button, press it back. And then as you press the belly button, firm the muscles up around it. So you feel the firmness. We need this firm. That's our support. And then standing up nice and tall, and then gently touching the back of the head. And for me, I drop the chin just a little bit so that my face is even or looking straight ahead. There's a tendency, because we sit a lot at the desk or somewhere with a computer, that the chin is going to want to lift up like this, and we get tipped backwards. So we need to pull the chin ever so slightly in. And we want to do that without straining the muscles in the neck and the back. So you may need to experiment and also do it gradually. So if the chin has to lift up a little, don't force it down, but you can gently guide it a little bit and then try to stay there as you breathe. And the one other thing in mountain pose that we do remember is we engage the legs. So if I'm sideways like this, I can bend the knees ever so slightly and then straighten the legs. Thighs are moving back towards the wall behind me. Thighs are moving back, and the quadriceps are shortening to lift the kneecaps up. And that opens the back of the leg nicely and also stabilizes the pelvis. There's a little squeezing in the buttocks here, gently squeezing the buttocks together, or maybe think of it as compacting the hips. So the side of the hips are like this. Think about moving the side of the hips inwards. And you might even feel, so this is a good place where the block comes in. Or remember, a rolled up towel, anything that's not, this would work too. Box of Kleenex. Haven't used this before, but a box of everybody hopefully has a box of Kleenex because of all the pollen, but a block is handier. You can feel a little better, actually. I can feel the muscle pressing into the block and the block pressing into the muscle, and it helps me engage these inner thighs, which helps to lift the arches of the foot. So when I engage the inner thighs and they're rising up, along with the quadriceps lifting up as the thighs move back, the spine extends, the arches lift slightly. So the outside edges of the feet, so that for the bottoms of the feet, it's almost like a C shape. So the arches are here. There's a C shape here from the heel. So we want to feel that all pressing down. The arches lifting, thighs lifting up, spine extending, and then extending the crown of the head up. And let's take a few breaths here, some cactus breaths. Bringing the palms together and then inhaling and exhaling. You don't need to touch the wall here. You can if it's comfortable, but it doesn't have to. Your elbows don't have to touch. We want to keep the shoulders relaxed. We want to keep the legs engaged, the lengthening up at the same time. And see if you can keep the face soft, eyes soft. One thing is, if you're standing against the wall, you might be able to close the eyes when you're doing this. Assuming your balance is okay. You could always move the chair back in front. That's a nice thing. So you'd stand at the wall, chairs in front, standing up tall. Find the chair so you know where the chair is, almost like you're sandwiched between the chair and the wall. And of course, if you're seated, you could put a chair in front, but it's probably okay to close your eyes if you're seated in a chair. Okay, so that's mountain pose. Let's do some standing poses. So we're going to start with triangle pose. And we'll do it seated. I'll demonstrate it seated first. If you know the triangle pose and you want to do it standing, please go ahead. So we're sitting up nice and tall. And for triangle pose, the feet are coming apart like this. If you're standing, it looks like this. Kind of looks the same, except you're standing. And if you're standing, actually, we'll do it with the feet. We'll do it with the toes pointed straight ahead today. And if you're standing, we'll extend the arms out and then leaning over to one side. So the bending is coming around where the hip is here. So I'm coming down and there's some curving on this side, but I'm bending and coming back up with a little bit of curve. And then if you're seated, it's the same. So I'm seated like this, arms are extended, and I'm reaching down. And perhaps if you're seated, you'll find it easier to slide the hand down the leg here. And you might even bend, you might even lean over a little bit more. And so you can experiment with either seated or standing, or starting with seated, and then the second time we'll do standing. I'm going back and forth. If you'd like to, you can add the breath to it. We're inhaling up, exhaling down. Of course, no matter how you're doing it, we're still breathing. We don't hold the breath. But if we're doing it with the breath and we have this sort of rhythmical movement, we're doing inhaling up, exhaling to the side. And then coming back up and taking a couple breaths, bringing the feet back to our comfortable position somewhere near underneath the hips. So we're coming back to mountain pose. Think about extending the spine up like when we were against the wall, if you were against the wall. And bringing evenness. And let's do it again. So this time we'll do it, I'll demonstrate it standing. And if you want to do it seated like we did before, feel free. It's always good. It doesn't really, they're different. They're different. So, and extending the arms out. And actually, if we're doing it, so if you're doing it standing, we'll add, we'll do it to one side. We'll turn the foot out. So I'm going to do it to this side first. Notice how the toes turn out and they're straight ahead. Make sure the hip and the knee and the toes line up. That's important so we have good alignment and we're not twisting the knee. We want to make sure the knee is nice and straight with the rest of the leg. And then the back foot turns in slightly. And when I turn the leg out, I keep the chest facing towards the camera. There's a tendency to want to follow it like this with turning, but I'm actually turned this way in triangle pose, facing. So there's a nice opening in the groin. And then we're extending out and then reaching out and coming down. And then inhaling up and reaching out as I exhale and coming down and inhale up. So try that a few times. Follow your own breath. Exhaling. Perhaps you can find some gracefulness as you inhale up. Think about lengthening, floating up, and then as you're exhaling, reaching out and coming down. Notice how the lower part of the body, there's a tendency to bend there. We want to try to keep the spine relatively long so it's not bending quite so much. Inhaling and then exhaling. And then come back up, turn the feet back. Now let's step the feet back together. And so if you're seated, the same thing. Please bring the feet back together for a moment. And then we'll step the feet apart again. We'll do the other side now. And you could do the same similar sequence if you're seated. You could turn the foot out slightly. Still want to keep the hip and the knee and the toes in line. So if I'm standing, my feet will be perpendicular now to the direction of the camera. And then inhaling And then exhaling, reaching, and then coming down. And then inhale up. And exhale, reaching out. And a couple more times. Inhale up. And exhale down. And then one more time. Inhale up. And exhale. Coming down. Notice the legs are straight here. Inhale up. So I'm not really bending. And then turning back and stepping the feet. Most of the standing poses, the legs are straight without locking the knees. So when we lock a joint, we tend to put the weight on the joint, the components of the joint, like the ligaments in the joint. That tends to stretch the ligaments out. We actually want to have the muscles keeping the joint in proper alignment so that the muscles get strengthened and the ligaments don't get stretched. We don't want, when you stretch the ligaments out, they never go back, which is how some people get, if you're familiar with hyperextending. So when a joint goes beyond, so say I have my finger like this, hyperextended would be like this, where my joint is overbending. And of course, I can't really do that. I have to push it to do that. But some people can actually, with their legs, when they lock their knee up, their leg bends backwards a little bit. And the knee actually collapses kind of inwards like this. So it's not good for the joint. And standing up nice and tall. We're going to do our balancing pose, our tree pose, and we'll do it. So we'll do it again seated first. We'll demonstrate it seated, but you can you can stand up and do it if you're familiar with doing it just standing. So sitting up nice and tall, mountain pose, stepping the feet out. So I get about a 90-degree angle here between the feet, and again, my body is starting to want to turn this way. I need to turn it back towards the front. So the turning is actually starting to come a little bit in the hips, but also in the belly. So there's a, doesn't have to turn all the way back to the front, but in general, we're looking out this way towards the camera. And then we'll bring the sole of the foot somewhere so that it's supported. Could be on the leg of the chair, or it could even be out here on the balls of the feet. And then extending the spine up, lengthening the arms, lengthening the spine. So think about extending up, feeling this bottom of this foot is pressing down, the sitting bones, especially on this side, pressing down, and there's a little lightness to this side, to this foot and this sitting bone. There's some lightness. So I'm extending up. More weight is on this straight side. It would be the same as if you were standing like this. All the weight would be on the straight side, like this. Same idea. And let's go ahead and come down. We'll do the other side. So mountain pose first, come into your mountain pose, make yourself feel evenness, and then go ahead and step the foot out and turn the torso back to face towards the camera, and then pressing the foot down, feeling the sitting bones pressing down, extending the spine up as you breathe in, bringing the foot in, and extending the arms up. Whatever version of tree that you'd like. The nice thing about seated is it's so easy to close the eyes relative to standing. Standing is very challenging to close the eyes. If you'd like to try it standing, try squinting a little first. So you start to remove the vision slowly. But when we remove our vision, our balance becomes, it's very difficult to balance. And then go ahead and come back down and step the feet back, mountain pose. And do that one more time on each side. This time I'll show it in standing version. But feel free to do it seated. Same idea. Remember to shift your weight. So no matter whether you're seated or standing, the weight is shifting. The spine is extending up. Shift the weight. Extend the spine. Gracefully extend the arms. Always think graceful, lengthening, breathing. And then stepping. We step that foot out. Lengthen the leg. Lengthen the spine. Up. And bring that foot somewhere. It could even rest on the other foot or the inside, or it can even come up on the inside of the thigh like this. Just don't put the foot on the knee. We don't want to press the knee with the sole of the foot. So we want to be above or below like this. And if you are doing it, we press the sole of the foot into the thigh and the inside of the thigh into the foot. So they kind of squeeze towards each other. And then we add the arms. And then hopefully you're not wobbly. Find a drishti point, something that won't move. Something that won't move. And then focus your attention there. But you could have a little fun with it too. Something that won't move. Focus your attention. Smile. Breathe. And find some steadiness, some stillness, and then come down. So that's always something to reach for in a pose. If you want to reach for something, maybe reaching's not the right word. Find some steadiness, some calmness, some stillness with the effort. We're efforting. Find some stillness with the effort. Do the other side now. So we step the opposite foot out, and then we find a spot for the sole of the foot. Lengthening the spine up, breathing, adding the arms however you want. So we have different arm positions depending on how you're feeling. You could even have your arms down like this. Broadening the chest, lifting the chest. And maybe smiling. It's always nice to smile. Find some joy, steadiness in the pose. And then go ahead and bring the foot down, bring the arms down. Let's swing coat sleeves as if we've got a coat on and we're just swinging the sleeves back and forth. No arms in the sleeves. And luckily we don't have to have a coat now. Yay. The weather's been so great. It's going to be a little cooler for the weekend, but and a little rainy maybe here. But it is summerish out, which is really nice. Although the pollen's been tough. I didn't get a chance to mention at the very beginning. Notice I have a box of tissues and I have my water. So a little bit of water. You know, the pollen can be really hard on the throat. Little sips of water regularly, and also it really clogs up the nose. So blowing your nose maybe a little more frequently than usual might make it easier to breathe, might make us feel better. Now let's swing the arms like this, like we're skating a little bit. So we call this a spiral movement. Spiral movement, which is really, if you play any sports, if you swing a bat, it's a spiral movement. If you play tennis, like this, spiral movement, ping pong, like this, throw the javelin, spiral movement, throw the discus, like this. So we get power. That's one of the reasons that core strength is so important, is the core not only supports the spine, but it gives the body strength when it moves. Our movements center around these spiral kinds of movements. And let's sit back down and sit up nice and tall. Take a couple of breaths. Let's do some cactus breaths. Inhale and exhale. I'm going to do eagle arms next. Eagle arms, and we'll do the legs too. The legs are optional, but they can be nice. So we're going to, so we always do one leg over the other and the opposite arm over the other. So I'll show you what I mean. So this is my right leg over left. So I can cross at the ankle. I can cross at the knee if that's comfortable. You want to be comfortable in the hips and the groin and especially in the knee joints. Please don't do this if it hurts your knees at all. And the pose is actually, the pose is traditionally in yoga done standing with this foot wrapped around the back of this leg. So if you can do that seated, or if you want to do it standing, if you can, please feel free. I can't do that. I could never do that. So my depends on your hips as to how this is going to feel. So I have right over left, and now I'm going to do left, my left over right like this, crossing like to make the figure X here with the elbow in the crook of the other elbow like this. So I'm starting out like this. Notice the shoulders are coming together a little, and then I'm going to raise the hands up into a V like this. So we're doing it step by step, and at some point we're going to start to intertwine, and you're going to find that it may be challenging to do this, or you may be able to do it. If it's starting to be more challenging, we have our strap or any kind of cloth. I happen to have there's a yoga strap here. So we have the right over left and the left over right. And so I could work like this, holding the strap as a way to be able to relax the arms a little bit in this position. So if I can't intertwine like this, I can hold the strap. And I'm breathing. So remember in the beginning, we wrapped ourselves up with our hug and we were breathing. So the position is really similar, but the arms are, instead of this, the arms are intertwined like this. And I'm sitting up nice and tall. So that's an important part of the pose is don't collapse. And then you can always work to lift the elbows up a little bit. You could even work up a little and then bring them back down to relax. This is usually a little more relaxing, and then slightly lifting up without forcing. So there's no pain or discomfort. I'm lifting up, and then I'm going to unwrap and unwrap slowly. So always coming out of the pose slowly. So I'm not springing out. Don't spring. And then crossing the other side. Actually, let's come back to mountain pose for a moment. Mountain pose and cross on the other side. And then crossing again. So whichever one, and you don't have to cross the legs. You could just do the arms. So this is left over right, and so now it's right over left. Make the X first. X marks the spot. V. V for victory, I guess. And then I'm going to intertwine the hands. And for me, you'll notice that my other side, it's easier to intertwine because I have restrictions in more restrictions in one shoulder than the other. Sitting up nice and tall. And then I can start to work lifting the elbows up, elbow no higher than the shoulder, making sure the shoulder doesn't rise up. And making sure I can breathe. Most important thing is to breathe. Remember, you can always relax down and then inhale up. We can use the breath. Inhale up, exhale down. And exhale down. And one more breath. And exhale down and slowly releasing with control, uncrossing, slowly releasing with control, and coming back. And I'm going to come into our seated mountain pose. So if you're standing, please go ahead and sit. That's the other choice. You don't have to do the legs, and you could do the eagle arms standing. So I don't know that I didn't mention that, but that's another option. There's always a lot of options in yoga, which is good. Sitting up nice and tall and exhaling, softening the shoulders. So we're going to come into our Shavasana. Relaxing the shoulders, softening the shoulders, relaxing the face and the eyes and the sides of the neck. So each time we breathe in, we feel some lightness with the spine, and each time we exhale, it's a grounding with the feet. So if you can, stay with the Shavasana. Keep going with it for another 5 or 10 minutes. We'll stay here for another minute or so, and then we'll formally end the class. Sitting up nice and tall. Each time you exhale, relaxing, softening the face and the eyes. Feeling the belly moving with the breath.
Relax, relax, one exercise, chill. Relax your muscle.
Namaste. Thank you very much.
Namaste, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today and for your flexibility with us starting a little bit late. I wanted to thank our friends of the Brookline Library for sponsoring this program and programs like it. I also wanted to recognize our community partners, Brookline Interactive Group, who streams this program to their Facebook page, YouTube page, as well as local channel 3 on RCN and Xfinity. And we wanted to thank most of all Keith for leading us through another wonderful session. Have a great weekend, everybody.